Hello and welcome back to part 4 of What If Subaru Had a Stand. Today we'll be covering the events of Arc 4. So let's get back to where we left off. Subaru would be riding in a carriage back to the mansion. He would remember how Rem confessed his feelings to him. He felt like he needed to tell Amelia this. So he would tell Amelia very anxiously how Rem felt. But Amelia would only reply with a single sentence. Who is Rem? Subaru would look surprised, as he has already defeated the white whale and his checkpoint has updated, so surely there was no way how Rem could be forgotten by the white whale's fog. But they would continue forward, Subaru still trying to think of how Rem could have been forgotten again. They would eventually make their way to where the fallen soldiers had been rested. Once Subaru arrived, he would find a familiar merchant, and it would be Otto. You see, he was captured by the witch cult when he was passing through right by. So Subaru chatted up with Otto for a quick moment. Eventually, Otto would say that he would like to present himself in front of Walsall. So Subaru would agree to take him there. But Subaru needed to look through the fallen allies. Eventually, he would find Rem, but she was in a coma-like state, and no one could remember him. Subaru, realizing he could use Return by Death to try to rescue Rem, so once more he would snap his own neck with his cosmic embrace. Subaru would respawn back in the carriage, right next to Amelia and Petra. To Subaru's horror, when he asked the question of who is Rem again, Amelia would only reply with who is Rem. He would repeat the same actions. We were still recruiting Otto to come back to the mansion, but we would get a flashback from Rem's point of view. They would be back on their way to the capital, and then they would run into a couple of guys in the middle of the road. Fouché, being impatient, would order them to carry forth, not stopping, for she did not care if there was a man or a group stopping their way. Rem, who felt something was off, would instantly grab Fouché and jump above the carriage. Suddenly, the man in front of the carriage would blast a powerful attack, obliterating the carriages. He would proceed to talk about how running over him wasn't according to his rights. When Rem would question this, he would only reply with that he was the Sin Archbishop of the Witches' Cult, representing greed. As the secondary person would step forward, introducing themselves as the Witches' Cult, representing the sin of gluttony. Couché, knowing this was a bad situation, would draw out her sword, planning to use her long slash attack that could slash people from further than where her sword was slashing at. As Couché would rush towards the Sin Archbishop of Greed, nothing would inflict, no damage would be inflicted on him. To Couché's shock, he would say that that wasn't according to his rights, and that how he hated people who ignored basic decency. But he was not there to fight. The Sin Archbishop of Gluttony would step forward, as he needed his meal. He was hungry. He would lick his hand and run towards the remaining survivors of the Carden explosion. Suddenly, Rem and Crusade would notice a person dressed in the attire of their allies, but they had no clue who he was. as the Sin Archbishop of Gluttony, he had erased his name and his memories, making everybody forget about him and himself. He was in a coma-like state. Rem, seeing this, would babble on about how her hero was going to come to her rescue. And the Sin Archbishop of Gluttony would be intrigued by this. So the Sin Archbishop of Gluttony would continue their attack. Unfortunately, for Rem and Crochet, they both had their names eaten, as along with Rem's memories. We cut back to the present moment, where Subaru is in a meeting with Crochet, Wilhelm, and Otto, and Felix. Crochet would confess that she had completely forgotten about her past life, and she had no idea who she was. To Felix's dismay, he would be greatly sorrowed by this, but they needed further manners. So Subaru and the unconscious Rem and Otto would make their way back to the other group, and then they would head back to the mansion, where they would be greeted by a woman with beast-like characteristics. She would introduce herself as Federica, a maid who recently decided to come back to Roswell's mansion, and she had previously worked there. Because after Rem lost her memories and her name, the protagonist, the work would severely crush Rem since no crush it would crush Rom since Rem was the goat carrying everything around the mansion. So Rom needed more support. Subaru would question this Frederica about Roswell and Rem's whereabouts. She would say they had entered the sanctuary and they would be holding captured by the local people there. You see, people in the sanctuary were half blooded with other races, half human and half other part. They couldn't leave the sanctuary unless someone fulfilled the trials. So they were holding the civilians there as they needed somebody to fulfill the trials so they could finally leave. After hearing this explanation from Frederica, Subaru would decide that he was going to go to the sanctuary with Amelia, Otto, and the ground dragon that he has befriended, which is Patricia. Before they left for the sanctuary, Frederica would give them a necklace, saying that that was crucial and they should look for with someone named or someone with the name of Garfield. They would take this advice. Then they would proceed to continue forward to the sanctuary. As they would cross the boundaries between the outside the sanctuary, Amelia would pass out. Subaru would take the necklace off of Amelia that Frederica had gave them. It was glowing. Subaru would try to throw the necklace outside of the carriage, but Subaru would be teleported to what would appear like to be ruins of a temple. Subaru would enter, questioning if this was the place where the trials must took place. When he entered, he would pass out, waking up in a grassy land with a girl upon a hill with white, luscious locks. She would introduce herself as the Witch of Greed, Echidna. As Subaru would climb up said hill to talk with this Echidna, then Subaru would question why he was summoned here. Echidna would simply respond that not many people were summoned here, and the witch agreed knew lots of things, and she could give lots of advice about any subject. Subaru, hearing this, would think for a little bit, asking if there was any way to reverse gluttony's power on somebody. But Akina would not be good on the subject, as she had lived 400 years ago, and she did not know anything about the Sin Archbishop of Gluttony or how his powers work. But they would continue forward chatting. Subaru would then notice that tea was on the table. He decided he was gonna drink some of it. As Subaru gulped it down, Akina would say that that tea wasn't just any normal tea. It had to be produced from inside of her. Subaru, realizing what she was saying, would instantly spit it out, as Akina would say that that was her body fluids. Realizing that he needed to get back to the outside world, he would say that he was going to be on his way, and if she could teleport him back to the real world. Akina would be taken aback, since she hadn't had a witch's tea party that was so brief. But as Akina questioned Subaru if he was sure that he wanted to abandon this place, Subaru confirmed, and Subaru would be on his way. Returning back to the ruins, Subaru would exit it, only to be confronted by what appeared to be an aggressive, half-raised person. But this person was be very angry with Subaru, trying to start up a fight, as he did not know why Subaru was here. Subaru, escaping from this long enough, he would then ask if he would go by the name of Garfield. He would reveal that was the name and how he knew it. Garfield, hearing Frederica's name, would question him of how he knew her. Then Subaru would explain that he only just met her at the mansion. Garfield would accept this answer, and then they would be leaded back to where the carriage was. When Subaru entered, he would find Amelia arresting, and Otto was severely beat up as Garfield did not have a pleasant experience with said merchant. Eventually, the group would make it to the the crumbling village that was located in the sanctuary. There, they would find Roswell and Rom. Roswell would be deeply injured for some reason. Then Roswell would explain to Amelia that the villagers wanted her to free the sanctuary, as they believed that she was capable of it. Since not everybody could take part of the trials, only people with certain blood criteria that Amelia was fit into. So Amelia would accept this role. That night, she would attempt the trials, but she would be accompanied by Subaru and the others, including Rom and Garfield. Subaru would gaze on Amelia entering the ruins. Then Subaru would see the ruins would react to Amelia glowing a bright blue color. Garfield would question if Amelia how would it took to complete the trials. But Subaru was confident in her abilities. After a long time had passed, Subaru grew anxious about Amelia. So he would enter into the ruins to try to pull out Amelia. But when he found Amelia, he would soon pass out too, as he gained the right to complete the trials through his meeting with the Echidna. Subaru would open his eyes in his own bed, as his dad opened the door, saying that breakfast was ready. But to Subaru, he was questioning why his middle aged father was half naked, as he did not have a shirt on. Subaru's father would question him about this, that it was pretty normal. As Subaru would prepare himself to get down to breakfast, he would feel a sudden pain in his head, like something important was being forgotten. He would simply ignore it as he went down to breakfast, only to realize it was a huge bowl of peas, which they all did not like whatsoever, mixed in with rice and other various ingredients. Subaru and his parents would try to toss around said dish of massive peas as they did not like them. Subaru would end up questioning why they prepared so much peas as they all did not like it, but his parents had no response. Eventually, he would split the peas with his father, devouring them, thanking his mother for the well cooked breakfast. Then Subaru's father would question about him about if he was gonna go to school today, and it was still wasn't too late. But Subaru, he has committed himself to have a life of a shut-in, so he would refuse, as he did not think he felt in. He would return to his room. He would once again feel the immense pain in his head. He did not know why. Subaru's father would soon enter the room, as he wanted to get Subaru in a better mood. He would question him about if there was any girls he liked, since that could be something that Subaru had to do something with. Subaru would question him about it and reply with he didn't have anybody like that. But his father would try again, but he would only get the same answer from Subaru. Eventually, he would convince Subaru to accompany him upon a walk, saying it would be a good exercise for him, as he hasn't left his room in quite a couple of days, leaving the house at all. Subaru would agree to this. As they walked, they would talk about the past. Subaru would feel deeply embarrassed about him, as he had always thought he had lived underneath the shadow of his father. Then he would pass by an old man who knew them. He would question why Subaru wasn't in school, but Subaru he didn't have a response. Shortly after that, he would have immense pain again. His father was carrying enough. He went to buy him a drink. He went to hand it to Subaru, but Subaru knew his father, as the trickster he was. He knew the soda was already shooken up, so he would open it slowly, not letting it spurt out everywhere. He would enjoy the drink. As they sat down on the bench, his father would question Subaru further about what was up with him and why he thought so poorly of everything. After Subaru experienced another episode of the immense pain from earlier, he would suddenly remember what has occurred in his current situation. He realized this must be the trials, so he would accept it, as he had never got to see his parents after he left that night for the grocery stop. So he would confess to his father that he did like a girl, and he thought they were gonna be happy. Subaru's father would congratulate him and want prior more information. Subaru takes this opportunity to properly spend with his family, as he didn't take that opportunity when he was back in the world of Earth. The next day, accordingly, Subaru would decide to go back to school, As he went off to school, he would farewell his mother that would be tailing him, but his mother continued to follow him. Subaru confessed that it would be embarrassing having his mother walk to him with school, but his mother would only reply that she just was gonna continue until she managed to get to the grocery store nearby. As Subaru made it past the grocery store, he would tell his mother that he deeply loved her and he didn't want to live in their shadows. Subaru's mother would realize this and tell him a farewell and give him important parently advice. Subaru would carry on to school. At school, he would find a kidna dressed up in a school attire. She would take note that his memories of this world must be quite fond. As Subaru would question if this was the trial. Kidna would confirm, but she would also reveal there were two more trials. Subaru would complete the first trial, but then he would reawaken, still seeing Amelia being deeply troubled. She must have failed the trial. Subaru would wake up Amelia, comforting her. Amelia would be thankful. Amelia and Subaru would make their way out, Garfield questioning if it was too tough for the girl. But Aram disagreed, saying Amelia had what it took. They would soon return to the estate where Roswell were staying at the cabin. There, they would meet a new person who called themselves a Rizuzu, and they appeared to be a small pink-haired elf. Then Subaru would question about this new person, and Rizuzu would reveal that she was indeed a clone and a spirit at that, saying there were many more clones of her as Rizuzu. Subaru would question this, since a spirit would need to brew tea and drink it, and she would reply that it has become a habit of hers. As the next day would arrive, Subaru would confront Amelia about retaking the trials. She would look deeply scarred over what happened in the first trial. Subaru would then decide that he needed to tell everybody about his ability to take forth in the trials. So he would explain at breakfast that he could take the trials in Amelia's place. And he also revealed there were 3 trials in total, and he has managed to clear the first one. Garfield would honestly not care who completed the trials. He just wanted them gone, was his apparent attitude. But everybody else seemed to think Amelia should take them, as Amelia would properly benefit from being in that position. Amelia would question Subaru if he just wanted to take the burdens off of her, making it a paradise for her. Subaru would not want that, as he just wanted to suggest another way to release and free the trials of the sanctuary. After Amelia would repeatedly attempt the trials throughout the next varying days, Subaru would decide to head back to the mansion as he needed to check up on things. He would tell this to the others as he would make his way. As Subaru made his way back to the mansion, he would realize everything was unusually quiet. As he explored in the mansion, he would find that Frederica and Petra was nowhere to be found. Subaru would then feel a chill down his spine as he felt a blade crossing the back of his body. he would instantly withdraw his stand cosmic embrace, as it would be revealed Elsa was back in the mansion. He would then forward attack Elsa with his stand, making a little defense system because Subaru knew how dangerous Elsa was due to his previous deaths by her. Subaru would stand a much more reasonable chance against Elsa, but Elsa was still immensely powerful. Subaru, realizing that this would be a great opportunity to use magic, he would cast Shamak only on Elsa. As Subaru took advantage of this, he would barrage Elsa with his stand repeatedly, deeply wounding Elsa. But Elsa seemed to tank it, as she would soon instantly kill Subaru. Subaru would open his eyes, realizing he was back at the moment where he had passed the first trial, and he needed to accompany Amelia back out to the sanctuary's village spot. With the newfound information that Elsa was going to attack, he would decide he would need to leave earlier, but he would reveal the fact that he could take place in the trials the night before. To his surprise, Garfield would act upset that he dared infringe that he should do it instead of Amelia. Subaru would question this, as in the previous loop, Garfield seemed chill about it. Subaru would then try cheering Amelia up, to no avail. The next day, Subaru would write a letter for Amelia, as he would go back to the mansion trying to stop what was going to happen. When he arrived back, he would find out that Frederica and Petra was alright this time. He would be relieved, but shortly Elsa would arrive. Subaru would be questioning this, since he had only noticed Elsa has arrived previously later in the week. Anyway, Elsa was here. Subaru would decide it would be best if he evacuated Rem, as she was defenseless this time. So they ran away from Elsa, Elsa keeping track of them. Subaru would tell Frederica that she would need to be a distraction. Frederica was half-bloodedly a demi-human, so she had the innate ability to transform into a full animal that would be like a jaguar similar creature. Petra would accompany Subaru, since she was just a little girl and she was completely defenseless. Subaru would find Rem still intact. He would carry her out of the mansion and go back in to support Frederica in her battle against Elsa. When everything seemed to be in their favor, suddenly a Mobius would appear inside of the mansion, making it a lot easier for Elsa to deal with them. But they would continue fighting off Elsa even though it was harder. Subaru wielding an energy construct sword that he had ordered his stand to make, slashing attacks at Elsa, keeping up defenses. Randomly, the mansion would catch fire for some reason. This would call Subaru and Frederica to disengage Elsa, as they needed to escape. But Subaru felt that Beatrice was still in the mansion and she needed to escape too. So, with the distraction of the fire, Subaru managed to slip out and eventually find where Beatrice was located. When he got to the sacred library, he would question Beatrice and command her that she would need to leave, as the mansion was burning up and things were in danger. Then Subaru would realize that Beatrice was holding a book akin to the gospel that he has took from Betelgeuse. He would question Subaru about this. No, he would question Beatrice about this. but Beatrice simply wouldn't reply, as the gospel didn't order her to do so. Subaru would be completely convinced that Beatrice was a member of the witches' cult, but seeing how she has helped him, he still wanted to get her out of the mansion. He would repeatedly try to get her out, but Beatrice would only ask him if he was that person. Subaru did not know what that meant, so he would say that he wasn't that person, but he needed Beatrice to escape with him. Beatrice would simply kick him out with magic. Then Subaru would be back in the blazing buildings. Elsa would soon find him and slaughter him again. Subaru didn't have much defenses, so he would easily die to Elsa. He would respawn back at the place with Amelia, simply returning back to the place they were staying. This time, he needed more help. So, when morning came around, he decided to make Rom accompany them. But before anything, Suba realized that when Julius told him that he had great spiritual potential, he thought it might be useful making some contracts. So we would ask Amelia about the subject. But Amelia was still recovering from the trials, and she would only be able to give Subaru the gist of making contracts. That was enough for Subaru, as he would spend the afternoon forming contracts with three spirits, three lesser spirits. Subaru would think of what he should call spirits, as he has named his stand ability after space, as he deeply liked cosmology, or whatever the word is for space study. So he would think of constellations to name his spirits. He would name the first one a little Dipper, the second one Big Dipper. But Subaru thought about what he should name his third contracted spirit. Then an idea would suddenly come up to Subaru. He had the perfect name for the third spirit. He would dub the third spirit Flugel. After Flugel is a tree that he blew up in the previous episode. With his newly formed contracted spirits, Subaru would be excited as he had gained a power up. Then the next morning he would leave with Ram in hand so he could properly defend the mansion from Elsa and whoever was controlling the Mob Beast. As Subaru suspected that the Mob Beast didn't just show up randomly, it had to be somebody with like a divine protection of Mob Beast. Subaru would learn about divine protections through Reinhardt, since like Reinhardt like has so many. After they would arrive at the mansion, Subaru and Rom would arrive at the mansion. They would find that Frederica and Petra were fine, to Subaru's surprise, since in the previous loops, Elsa was either early or late. But he suspected Elsa was gonna arrive soon, so he would try to like rescue Beatrice early, warning her about the impending danger. But then in there, a mob beast would come into the mansion, like also igniting it ablaze. Then Elsa would accompany them as Frederica and Rom went searching for Subaru still had to convince Beatrice to come out, but it was to no avail. Eventually, when Beatrice asked if he was that person, Subaru would say that he was indeed that person. Beatrice wanting to believe this, but knowing that he wasn't probably that person. So Beatrice would question him, eventually deciding to believe Subaru's statement that he was that person. So she would leave the library with Subaru. As they made their way outside of the forbidden library and outside the mansion, they would realize that Frederica and Rom were already dead. They were not powerful enough to defend against Elsa and the Mob Beast. So Subaru would look for the only remaining survivor, being Petra. They would make their way outside of the mansion down to where the village was, trying to figure things out. But to their surprise, a little girl from the village would step forward. This would be Amelie. She would be dressed in strange attire. She revealed that she was an assassin, and she indeed was controlling Ma Beast. Then, shortly, Elsa would arrive, wanting to murk them off. Immediately, Subaru would withdraw his stand ability and start fighting Ame- Amelie off. Melly? No, no. Well, whatever. But Beatrice would defend Subaru, trying to keep him safe against Elsa's incoming attack. Eventually, Elsa would focus on Beatrice, managing to stab her throat to the back. She would be delighted as she has never cut open a spirit's belly before. But it would be surprisingly light for Elsa. Then Beatrice would soon evaporate into nothing. Her 400 years of suffering, of isolation, came to an end. Subaru would be deeply saddened by this fact. So he would continue fighting off the two of them to his best capabilities. Eventually, seeing guys, low key, I started like telling the what if or the recording was paused, so I don't know where I left off, but I'll just pick up where Beatrice got stabbed and died trying to protect Subaru. Eventually, Subaru would try to fight the other two off, Elsa and Amelie. And after seeing Petra die to Amabi, Subaru would deeply be scarred, and in a raged state, he would lack the common sense to survive, and then he would die and respawning back at the same checkpoint. He needed to do things a different way. He would try asking Garfield for help, but Garfield did not seem to want to. Subaru would realize that Garfield probably couldn't leave the boundary as he was a mixed blood. Dude, Subaru would assume to his characteristics of the demi beast, not the demi beast, demi human. The next morning, Subaru went to try to talk to Roswell, but before he could do that, he suddenly felt a hand upon his mouth. Sensing that something was up, he would try to withdraw his stand, but he would pass out shortly. Reopening his eyes at a location he did not recognize, he has been imprisoned by Garfield. He would try questioning him, but his mouth was tied up with a gag. Subaru would use his stand to take out his gag and try questioning Garfield about why he would imprison him. Garfield would only reply that he was suspicious with all that miasma hanging on to him. On the outside, people would be looking for Subaru as he has vanished when briefly in the morning. Amelia would grow deeply worried about Subaru, but Otto, he knew what happened to Subaru. he was gonna find Subaru and rescue him, but he had to wait until Garfield made his return. Subaru would question how long he's been in there, as he couldn't tell. It was always the same constant state. Eventually, he would hear somebody coming in. To his surprise, it was Otto. He would question how Otto got here and why he was doing this. Otto replied that he thought they were friends. Subaru would deeply laugh at this. Otto would be surprised and kinda hurt by the statement of Subaru laughing at him after he proclaimed their friendship. Subaru would ask Otto of what was happening with the other people as he had been captured. Otto would explain to Subaru that the people has been looking for him and Amelia had stopped participating in the trials until they found Subaru. Subaru would once Subaru was free, he would try to make his way back to the village in the sanctuary. But to his surprise, Garfield would shortly find them and grow enraged that Subaru had escaped his imprisonment. Garfield would soon activate his fully beast form, turning into a massive human-like tiger, muscly appearance. This would deeply frighten Subaru and Otto. Subaru probably could take on Garfield if he was in his normal human form, but this seemed a bit too much. They would soon be interrupted by Ram, with Patricia. They would soon make their escape away from Garfield in his monstrous form, realizing that three of them on Patricia was too much for the ground dragon. Otto would make the decision that he was gonna try to slow down Garfield no matter what. So Otto would briefly has a flashback of his life as he remembers when he first unlocked his divine protection of animal communications or something like that. He and how he could talk to animals and get information out of them. Coming back to the future, Otto would command his creatures to barrage, like surround Garfield. Garfield would only be greater angered by this, as he started smushing and smashing around the wildlife that has surrounded him. But this would buy him enough. This would buy Subaru enough time to make his leave. As Subaru last glanced at Otto, he would see that Garfield smacked him clean in half, seeing Otto's top half flying so closely to him. Subaru would be deeply horrored by this, but eventually he would make it to the sanctuary's boundary. When he would cross it, he would reopen his eyes at an undisclosed point in the sanctuary, but there was no covering a lot of things, as he had been teleported there by the necklace. Subaru, wondering why the sanctuary has become a snow-filled wasteland, as he couldn't find anybody anywhere. As Subaru would wander around, he would stumble upon a little rabbit, the only life that he has seen. As he reached down to pet him, he would see that the rabbit would quickly snatch off one of his fingers. To Subaru's horror, he would see many more of these rabbits appear. This would be the Great Rabbit. Subaru would instantly withdraw his stand, making as many defenses as possible. But the Great Rabbit came in numbers, and they quickly overpowered Subaru's defenses, eventually breaching it and making it to Subaru. They would bury within inside Subaru, eating him from the outside from the inside out and the outside. This would be a great pain as Subaru would shriek in either in utter pain. This would be quite a brutal death as Subaru would eventually die. He would return by death to the last checkpoint, but this time he'd be so deeply scarred by being eaten alive so gruesomely. He would bash his head against the floor. Eventually, he would be resummoned to Echidna's tea party, where he would feel utterly calmed as Subaru questioned Echidna about his circumstance. But then Subaru would realize, from Echidna's point of view, this would have been right before they'd had their last tea party. So questioning Echidna about this fact, Echidna would reveal that she knew. She knew Subaru could return by death. Subaru would be grow so deeply relieved that he could finally tell somebody. He would proceed to confess to Echidna over and over that he could return by death. That it was so painful having to keep this burden upon himself. Echidna seeing Subaru at his lowest would bring him back up. But after that, Subaru would realize if he exited the witch's tea party, he would forget about all of this, and his mind would simply break. So Subaru would try to find out a way to keep the memories of the witch's tea party, so he could continue forward on his journey. Subaru would try to get this way around Echidna, but Echidna would happily propose a counterwise, allowing Subaru to remember the events of the witch's tea party and offering up more Echidna's tea. Subaru, forgetting this was her body fluid, would drink up, shortly realizing it was after Echidna stated he was guzzling down a witch's tea again. Then Echidna would explain that the other witches of Sin also shared a space with her, but she could only switch out with one of them at a time. Subaru would ask to speak to the Sin, the witch of Gluttony, as Echidna has told him that she was the creator of the white whale, the great rabbit, and the black serpent. As Echidna would vanish into nothing, a little girl would appear, asking if Subaru was a sinner. Suddenly, Subaru's body would break down. Subaru would panic, but to his surprise, being broken down would have no pain whatsoever. The little girl got what she desired. After all, she met Subaru, revealing herself as the Witch of Pride. Then another, as she disappeared, another witch would arrive. She would call herself the Witch of Wrath, Minerva, soonly fixing up Subaru's body back into the previous state. Subaru would question about Daphne, the Witch of Gluttony, but Minerva, but Minerva, saying before Daphne could appear in Echidna's place, the other witches wanted to meet Subaru. Finally, as finally, as the Witch of Wrath would vanish, Subaru would finally meet up with the witch he wanted to talk with. Seeing the Witch of Gluttony, he would question her about how to defeat the three mobbies she has created, and asking her if it was like reasonable for him to want to kill her creations. The Witch of Gluttony would confess that she has created them to solve the world's problem of starvation. But then Subaru would still want to know how to defeat the Great Rabbit. So the Witch of Gluttony would tell Subaru that the Great Rabbit is attracted to strong magic, and they don't have the intelligence to keep themselves alive, as the Great Rabbit can endlessly copy itself. The Witch of Gluttony would confess to Subaru that she had made the white whale massive so the people could feast on its endless meat. But then she realized that the white whale was eventually just gonna run out of meat, so she had created the Great Rabbit as it could endlessly duplicate itself, providing infinite food. But Subaru would question her about this because the right rabbit, the white, my gosh, I can't speak English, guys. The great rabbit. Subaru would question this since the great rabbit seemed to have quite an appetite for anything that could be edible. Uh, The Witch of Gluttony would reply to this as that her creations, it wouldn't be fair if they couldn't indulge themselves in the pleasure of food. Eventually, she would reach the Black Serpent, as she admitted that this mob beast was meant to reduce the amount of people, so so the other people would have more food rations. After Subaru heard this, he decided he wanted to talk back with Echidna would soonly replace the Witch of Gluttony, asking Subaru how it went. Subaru would confess he had met up with two other witches that he did not plan for. But Echidna simply would not care about this as much as Subaru thought. As the witch's tea party would come to an end, Subaru would reawaken in the real world, realizing that a mysterious black illness or black fog has brinkley have brinkly covered up the land. Subaru would question why this was happening and noticed that Amelia was gone as long with everybody else. As Subaru realized this mysterious black fog was increasing its height, he would realize that he was soon going to be embraced by this mysterious black fog. Until suddenly Garfield would hop down, picking up Subaru up to a higher place. Subaru wasn't expecting Garfield to rescue him, but it was still a good save. Subaru would question Garfield about what happened to everybody else. Garfield would confess that they had been swallowed up by the mysterious black edge on the ground. He would explain that Ram has saved him before he could be swallowed up, and they would deeply be sorrowful by that. Soon, a familiar soon a familiar being would arrive to the field. Subaru realizing that this was the Witch of Envy, Sand, and she came after Subaru since she did not like the fact that Subaru talked about his return by death so much in the witch's tea party. After a while, they would eventually be sucked into the blackness of the void, realizing whoever entered it gained the fragments, all their conscious were merged. Subaru, having random memories flood his mind, would briefly see a mysterious location with a Rizuzu, a Rizuyu, and a naked Rizuzu in a crystal. Seeing this, Subaru would keep note of that. But Subaru would find a sharp glass shard, and right before he would stab it into his neck, right after he would stab it into his neck, he would see Satella confessing her love for Subaru over and over again. and then asking why. Subaru would once again open his eyes back at that same safe point with this with the knowledge of these Rizuzus, Rizuyu, Subaru would venture to that place, eventually finding all the Rizuyu clones. They would say that Subaru is an apostle of greed now, and gain the ability to command these Rizuzu clones. Subaru would ask the Rizuzu to keep their interaction a secret from Garfield, since she had confessed that Garfield was also an apostle of greed. Subaru would make his way back, but he would send out one of his spirits to investigate Garfield. This would be a Big Dipper who would be sent off to investigate and gather information about Garfield. The next morning, Big Dipper would return to Subaru, relaying some information about Garfield. Big Dipper would tell Subaru that Garfield was actually the younger brother of Frederica, as they also had a mother that died in an that supposedly died in an avalanche long ago when they were both young. Subaru, realizing this information could be valuable, he would decide he would need to talk to Roswell, as the timing of the mansion attack would seem a bit questionable. As he would confront Roswell about this fact, Roswell would confess that he had known Subaru would come here soon to question him. Subaru, remembering that Beatrice was carrying a gospel, would ask Roswell if Beatrice was a member of the witches' cult. Roswell would deny this fact, would deny that Beatrice was a member, instead telling Subaru that what Beatrice was holding a wisdom was actually a totem of wisdom, as it was incomplete. It also shared the name with its incomplete counterpart, known as the Gospel, saying that the original Tome of Wisdom was destroyed long ago, but there remains two copies, and one was possessed by Beatrice. As Subaru would have a lengthy discussion with this to Roswell. Suddenly, Ram and Garfield would enter the room as Roswell had commanded them to come in. Then then Roswell would get out of bed, instantly questioning Subaru about his time looping ability. Subaru would be taken aback, pretending like he didn't know anything about what Roswell was saying. Then Roswell would stab his hand through Rom and Garfield at the same time, and then he would question Subaru why he didn't seem to be hurt by this fact, and Subaru would only be surprised that Roswell would do such a thing. He would then question if this was something that Subaru could undo. Subaru eventually deciding that he had enough of this. But when he looked outside, he realized that the snow had once again started. To his to his utter dismay, the white rabbit would once again return. This time it would feast on Roswell. Subaru, taking advantage of this, would protect himself with his stand as much as he could. Eventually, he would make it back to the ruins where Amelia was, but to Subaru's surprise, Amelia seemed crazed. as when Subaru entered very poorly injured, wait, no, very horribly injured, Amelia would confess her love for Subaru and then gently let him rest on her lap as as this enraged Amelia would believe that was a thing that Subaru enjoyed doing. What English words, guys? Quite much. Subaru would then exit the ruins, then finding Garfield, who managed to avoid the White Rabbit so far. That Garfield would question Subaru about his injuries and what was happening with Amelia inside. Gar- Subaru would tell Garfield that Amelia had confessed to him. Then Garfield would be taken aback, questioning what this was about, getting really angry. Then Subaru would tell Garfield that he knew that Amelia wouldn't confess to him like this at all. Realizing this, Garfield would soon leave, as the White Rabbit has appeared. Subaru, realizing this, would go back into the ruins, ma- making a wall of energy with his stand, preventing the White Rabbit from entering the ruins. Then Subaru would let, then again Subaru would lay down as his injuries finally caught up to him, bleeding out everywhere, with chunks of him missing thanks to the great rabbit. Subaru would die in Amelia's lap. As soon as Subaru would die, Amelia would gently kiss him on the forehead, and then Subaru would reopen his eyes back at the back at the checkpoint. This time, Subaru would talk to Roswell, betting that if he could fix everything in this Pacific loop, that Roswell would have to be loyal to him and not betray him and like be nice to him. Be nice for now. Making this a bet, Roswell would agree to this, offering up like a spell thing that would force a loyalty to the other person. So whoever lost would have to embrace this magic, and it would accompany as long as it would accompany a person with their soul. So even if Subaru did die and repeated another loop, he would still have that in mark in branded on him. Subaru with new stakes. He would go back to the mansion, but with this time he would confront Garfield about his help. Garfield Subaru knowing Garfield's parents weren't knowing Garfield's parents were a human, his mother, and partially Demi's father. Even though Garfield wasn't the Pacific blood ratio to be with helped withholded inside of the sanctuary's barrier. So after recruiting Garfield, they would make their way back to the mansion. This time, when Elsa arrived, Garfield would take on her, and Subaru would try to free Beatrice from her library. Making once Subaru managed to get there, Subaru would repeatedly enter Beatrice's room after Beatrice would repeatedly kick him out, eventually breaking breaking Beatrice's spirit to kick him out. But yeah, that totally makes sense, guys. Eventually, Beatrice would form a contract with Subaru, and that would seemingly fix the problem at hand. With We cut back to Garfield, who was on the brink of death after he found out that Elsa had like a super regeneration or something. And after, yeah, and that mansion was also on fire, by the way. So after Garfield intensely bit into the neck of Elsa, Elsa would do the same thing to Garfield, being like a super bloodsheddy, cool battle scene that I could that would be like really cool looking if it was animated. Well, it was animated. You should go check out ReZero. It's peak fiction. Well, anyway, back to the story. Eventually, picking up a corpse of a mob beast that he defeated earlier, he would smash Elsa with it, and that would be Elsa's death to his knowledge, and to everybody's knowledge, and to my knowledge too. So they would carry on looking for Mealy. Wait, yeah, Mealy, the mob beast user. As they would find her, she would be captured inside the prison, and Frederica and Garfield would reunite as they were siblings. If I didn't already say that already, which I probably did. And after they reunited, Garfield would comment that his sister was a lot larger than what he remembered. Anyway, they had to capture Mealy, the mob user, so they went. Eventually, they found her and Beatrice um, with Subaru, and with Subaru's other spirits that he contracted before Beatrice, they managed. That would be enough to defeat Mealy, imprisoning him. Frederica would imprison Mealy at the yeah Mealy at the mansion. They would make their way back to the mansion. No, no, wait. They would make their way back to the sanctuary. After they got back, they would realize the white rabbit had no, not the white rabbit. The great rabbit has been unleashed. To then, with a newly fresh contract between the Subaru and Beatrice, they would outline a magical barrier for all of the right white, all of the great rabbit. And then Amelia would crystallize said barrier in ice. Beatrice would use a powerful spell called El Shamak, similar to Shamak, but not really. She would send off the Great Rabbit to a different dimension, not Earth, just into a separate pocket dimension, where the White Rabbit, well, the Great Rabbit, the Great Rabbit, would continue cannibalizing itself and endlessly duplicating. So back to the main story. Amelia would still have the trials to overcome. Eventually, we would get back to Amelia attempting the first trial, and Puck is gone since Puck made a contract with Amelia, as we know. But it also blocked her previous memories. So after that was destroyed, after the con, oh my gosh, English words. After the contract was, oh my gosh, after it was broken, Amelia would regain her memories and memories of her childhood. With Subaru said support, Amelia would manage to manage to pass the first trial. Meanwhile, otherwhere, Roswell was still up to trouble, trying to stop Subaru from like completing his bet. But he would shortly be stopped by Ram, as Ram would confess her feelings for Roswell. Roswell would be taken aback as he literally like killed off her entire village, but Ram still fell in love with him somehow. Make that sense? It's like a slave falling in love with their owner. Like, ew, that's kind of kinky. No, not kinky, but I can't speak English, guys. You obviously know my brain is malfunctioning at this point. It's like very late. But anyway, back to the story. as Puck would, yeah, Puck would recrystallize himself one more time just to distract Roswell with the aid of Rom. Roswell would briefly be captured as he would have the second copy of the wisdom toad the wisdom totem, the book that Beatrice had. It would be shortly burned into like ashes. Now there were no remaining copies supposedly. Then forward, with Roswell out of the way, yeah, with Roswell out of the problem, Amelia would continue with the second child, and it would be, yeah, it would be the unthinkable presence. Then Amelia would live out a future, no, no, live out a presence with her, with an alternate timeline that she had like a really happy story. That you should like. I'm not gonna cover it since like that's not really relevant to the what if. Well, it is relevant, but you can just like watch the anime and like get the idea. So we would break forward to the third child being absolutely destroyed, and Amelia would then free the sanctuary. But after after Amelia would tell Subaru about how she felt and how things were broken down, Subaru would like romance Amelia up, and they would share their first mooch, and that'd be great. But Garfield, before Amelia broke the trials, Garfield would attempt the trials because he wanted to relive his past, and he would find out that his mother did not abandon them. His mother simply went out to find their father. And I also forgot to mention that Subaru did partake of the trials, the secondary trial. It was behold an unthinkable present, and basically the trial was that Subaru had to face the different dimensions that could be happening where he's permanently dead, and he would see how everybody is so sad that his life ended in those dimensions. So Subaru would be left with questions if those if he if every single time he returns by death, if the world just resets or just creates an alternate dimension where he did not die. And also, Subaru would fight against Garfield, unlocking his sloth witch factor, which would be invisible providence. I'm giving it a little bit of a buff. He now has three hands, and since Subaru was like super slothful, nah, he was kind of more thoughtful since he was relying on his stand. I'm gonna say he will have three invisible providences. They can still face through matter. Well, actually, I'm gonna only make it one of them can face through matter. And Subaru can basically combine his three hands into one hand that's like powerful and like super strong that he can like pick up himself with. And yeah, they're invisible too, if you didn't know that. And what else is there to cover? Yeah, wait. Oh, yeah, yeah. They would after the sanctuary would be freed, they would return back to the mansion, and Subaru would be officially be dubbed the Knight of Amelia, and he'd be like more powerful than canon Subaru since his buffs are that he did not break his gate and he can learn further yeah, he can learn further magic spells, and he does have three spirits before Beatrice. I'm gonna say that he can like make more contracts with future spirits since Beatrice like scares them away, but he still has his other three OG spirits before Beatrice. And Invisible Providence has three hands. One of them can, yeah, you already heard about Invisible Providence. And I'm gonna also say Invisible Providence can be used more frequently and has less drain on Subaru. And after Subaru will be officially dubbed Amelia's Night. I think that's it. Maybe, probably that's. I think this is the end of the video, guys. Leave a like if you want part 5. Part 4 was like, I sorry for yeah, and also sorry yesterday I had to binge season 2. I don't have the perfect memory with these longer arcs, but that's why I did not post this yesterday. So, bye.